Another day, another dollar. You might not think money is something to sing and dance about, but don't worry, that's why I'm here. I'm Julie Beckham, the financial educator at Rockland Trust, and this is Behind the Curtain, Money Made Simple, the podcast that takes the mystery out of money and puts the spotlight on your financial life. If you've ever felt behind, confused, or just totally overwhelmed when it comes to your finances, you are not alone. In fact, you're part of a cast of thousands. So take your seat and silence your phones as we pull back the curtain on personal finance. Well, welcome to Behind the Curtain, Money Made Simple. I'm Julie Beckham, and I am here with Matt Wallace, the VP Education and Career Pathways at Granite Edvance. And I'm so excited to have you here to unpack one of the most talked about, complicated, and notorious documents if you're a college-going student or family, the FAFSA, which, by the way, I say wrong all the time. Tell me what this form is called.
Yeah, so the FAFSA is the free application for federal student aid. It took me, I feel like, years to get that right. So you're right? Not alone on that.
It just rolls off the tongue for you now, Matt, which is great. I mean, you are, you've got the title for that as well at Granite Edvance, helping so many families and students navigate this form and the entire college process. But I've done podcasts. I've talked about the FAFSA so many times, but I've often said it wrong. Like I say, the FAFSA, but it's probably the most tongue twisting acronym out there. So you know what? We welcome all versions of the way you pronounce it. So, don't be afraid. And don't be afraid of filling it out. That's part of why I have Matt on here today from Granite Edvance. At first, tell me a little bit about Granite Edvance.
Yeah, so Granite Edvance, we're an organization that's been around since the 60s. We're a nonprofit who helps students of all ages and learners understand their education and career pathways. So we'll work with students as young as fifth grade, just trying to help them think about why school's important and what their future holds for them and why planning for their future is important. And then we'll work with adult learners, right? Somebody who's trying to change careers after being somewhere for 10 years or trying to upskill so they can move up in their current career. We're happy to work with all learners. But the majority of the work we do is with students in high school, right? There's a huge need of students who are moving through, their junior, senior year of high school, thinking about that post-secondary plan. So we'll work with students on the FAFSA and on college application process, understanding the financial aid awards they have, just trying to figure out what their next step is, right? We have a program that we call Exploring Future Options, where students come in, sit down one-on-one with one of our team members, and just talk about what they want, what their hopes are. And our team takes their wealth of knowledge and helps them create a plan. We also are a scholarship provider. So in 2025, we awarded $750,000 to New Hampshire residents for scholarships. And in this next 25-26 fiscal year, we will award $800,000 to students attending four-year college, two-year colleges, and trade schools. And then I think the last kind of core piece is we're also a student loan provider. So we're a nonprofit student loan provider, which means we access funds for our loans in a different way than many of the private organizations, which allows us to offer highly competitive interest rates that we think is a service to students. We know that most families, when they're going to college now, it's going to have a gap, right? That financial aid package that we'll talk about a little bit more at the FAFSA isn't going to cover that total cost. So we try to provide loans with highly competitive interest rates, other benefits that are specific to New Hampshire residents as well.
Wow, that is such a wraparound service for such an important financial life stage, which is entering college. And it's just not the financial life stage for the student, but because of the cost of college for the family as well. So Granite Edvance, are there services that you provide outside of New Hampshire? Or what does one have to live or qualify for to benefit from any of these services?
Yeah, the high level for those college and career planning pieces, typically we work with New Hampshire residents. That said, we know there's a few high schools in the state that have students from Vermont and Maine going to them. If you're attending a school in New Hampshire at the high school level, will work with you. Same thing at the university level, right? So we kind of refer to it as the nexus. So the New Hampshire nexus. So if you're a student who is going to UNH, for instance, but you're from Maine, Massachusetts, Vermont, California, wherever, we'll support you as well because you're in that region. So, and that applies the same thing for the Granite Edvance student loan. So if you're a student from California going to UNH, going to Plymouth, going to St. A's, you're eligible for that New Hampshire Nexus loan product. Now, if you live outside of New Hampshire, we have a lot of other services that you can take advantage of. So we also have another loan product that is for residents of the other 49 states who are not attending college in New Hampshire. So it's called the Invest in You loan product. It has similar benefits of being a nonprofit lender where the interest rates are lower and highly competitive. And we also have a variety of free resources on our website. So we have 6 things of printed material that we call Insider Guide. So it's like a full walkthrough of the admissions, the financial aid process. We also have one on athletics, accessibility. So a student has a 504, an IEP, and they're trying to figure out how that translates into college. A walkthrough on that. We have one for adult learners, and then another one for early college and career planning, which students from about 7th to 10th grade can take advantage of. Plus everything on our YouTube channel. So lots of things, recordings.
That's awesome.
So all the presentations that our team members do in schools and in the one-on-one meetings, we've recorded so other people who may not be able to take advantage of that in their high school or in the one-on-one meetings can still take advantage of those learnings.
That's amazing to share that education. Well, I mean, it seems as though you've got a great thing going on in the state of New Hampshire, and you're being a good neighbor by hosting these informational sessions or offering some of these products or services to neighboring states. So if, a lot of our listeners are from Massachusetts, is there a counterpart to what you do at Granite Edvance in Massachusetts?
Yeah, so there's an organization called MIFA. So they do a lot of the similar things as we do. Some of the programmatic offerings differ a little bit, so definitely explore that website. But if you're a student in Massachusetts who's going to UMass, they have a similar loan product as we do for the student attending college in New Hampshire, right? So definitely if you're coming to college in New Hampshire, shop both MIFA and Granite Edvance. If you're a Massachusetts resident going to UMass, again, we would encourage you to look at our Invest in You product, but you could also shop that MIFA product as well. So they're a very similar organization to us and do amazing work.
Okay, this is awesome. Okay, so MIFA is the Massachusetts Education Financial Authority.
Sounds
and
right.
We're talking with Matt Wallace from Granite Edvance. So this is great because sometimes knowing what resources are out there and where to start is the most important way to just start exploring this whole process of not only just applying to colleges, which if you've kind of held anyone's hand while doing that recently is a process in itself. But the financial side of pursuing higher education has become not just more and more expensive, but in a sense more complicated. So one of those forms that we want to focus on today is that FAFSA. So why do people need to fill out this form?
Right. So the reason everybody should fill out the FAFSA, and I like to emphasize that word everybody, is that the FAFSA is the way colleges and universities get a sense for your financial well-being and financial need. And most colleges and universities, and it's a large majority, take the number that comes out of the FAFSA. So when you do the FAFSA, you're going to put in tax information, assets, income to get your full financial picture. And what comes out is called the SAI, or the Student Aid Index. And this is a number that is put together by the federal government that says this is roughly how much we expect this family to be able to contribute per year to a student's education. Now, we'll just caveat, it doesn't always feel accurate for the families, right? We hear that all the time. Like, this number doesn't quite feel accurate. But it is an algorithmic way for it to come across. And then the colleges and the universities take that and will assign need-based aid. So aid based on your family income. So does the federal government, right? So if your SAI is on the lower side, it can be as low as negative $1,500. You may be eligible for the Pell Grant, which is up to $7,395. That would go directly towards your education that you do not have to pay back. You'll also, through the FAFSA form, depending upon what your SAI is, be eligible for federal direct loans. So unsubsidized and subsidized loans. The big difference is with the unsubsidized, you start collecting interest on the day you start take out the loan, where the subsidized loan, the federal government's paying the interest through your grace period. And then the last piece is you may be eligible for federal work study. And one important thing to think about with federal work study is that it's not going to be applied directly to your bill, but it increases the pool of work you may be able to get on a college campus. So you'll be able to get a job on campus. There's also work study jobs available in local communities. And so you get that money through a paycheck. And then you can say, I'm going to apply that to a payment plan or to my spending for like my week-to-week groceries and those sorts of things.
Okay, so not filling out this form is like having a job and having a 401k and having your employer match it and not contributing, right? It's like you could be leaving money on the table if you don't fill out this form with your college process. Even if you think, like, well, maybe the government, maybe this form will decide that I can afford to send my student to college. It still benefits you because of what I'm hearing from you and from my own experience with my own kids going through this is like, you might not get the Pell Grant, but you might get the opportunity for work study. And if you're the one who has the opportunity for work study, you might be able to get the jobs, more hours that you want or the job that you want on campus. So there's kind of a slew of opportunities there that filling out this form is the gateway to accessing those opportunities.
Yeah, I think I'll underscore two other things there. One is institutions use the SAI comes from the FAFSA form to assign their own institutional aid as well. So money that's coming from the institution and not the federal government. So if you don't do that, you forego them even reviewing your financial situation to consider that, right? So in most institutions will award some level of institutional need-based aid. And the other piece is if you're somebody who's going to take out a student loan for college, the federal interest rates are typically highly competitive. So they're in the sixes. And there's no underwriting criteria. So by not doing the FAFSA, you're relying solely on the private market, and you might be getting a higher interest rate for that, $3,000 to $5,000 you may get from the federal government.
So why don't you think why doesn't everyone fill out this form? If all of these things, is it lack of information? Is it because it's complicated? Is it language barriers? Like what do you see the biggest barriers to people filling out this form?
So answer to everything you just said is yes. But I think the kind of the most common ones is people are afraid that when they fill out the FAFSA, they have to accept the loans that are offered. And that's a misnomer because you can always decline the federal loans. So you can fill out the FAFSA and say, I want to get all the free money, right? All the money I don't have to pay back. And then maybe I have a 529 account that I'll pay the rest out of. You can decline those federal loans. So it's not a commitment to anything. It's not even a commitment to go to school, right? It's just a way to maximize that federal aid. I think another piece is, at least in recent history, people have been very nervous about the FAFSA because 2-3 years ago, they made a bunch of changes to the FAFSA and the rollout was not good, right? I don't think that's overstepping by it to say it was not good. It was taking people hours, days, weeks to get through the FAFSA. Lots of changes, lots of kinks in the process. They've mainly been updated. So our team does a ton of FAFSA work. And on average, we're seeing approximately 20-25 minutes for the FAFSA. And there's been a lot of things that have been improved, right? So if you have a social security number, in the past, you had to wait 3 to 5 days to actually then complete the FAFSA after creating your studentaid.gov ID. Now that's instant verification. So there's no longer that waiting period. And there used to be this feeling that you had to do a ton of data entry, right? In the old form 4 years ago, there was somewhere around 140 questions that you had to input. It's down to about 39 because they've connected, if you have that social security number, to the federal tax information. So they're pulling in your tax data automatically, so saving a ton of time. And then I think the other one is just kind of wrapping in some of those other pieces, just not familiar with it. For a first generation family who hasn't gone through college, new Americans, there's just some unfamiliarity with the process. So we're hoping we can, doing podcasts like this and other outreach can bring awareness to the benefits for those families.
Right, because you'd be able to conduct a class, a workshop, go onto a YouTube video, or even do one-on-one like calls with people to assist them through this process, as would MIFA, or if any other states, might have that service as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's so, I think that fear keeps us away from doing a lot of things. And if you think like, oh my gosh, I don't want all these student loans, and you think if you're filling this out, you're going to have to. But I've experienced where my son accepted the subsidized loan, but didn't accept the unsubsidized because he didn't need that portion.
Right.
So, he knew, okay, well, this one won't start accruing interest right away. So that's the loan I'll take. And, but it's, a difference between a checkbox and a decline. But, when you're talking about your money and your future, it's a little scary to make those decisions. But again, this is just a form. You're finding out information. For those of you who have filed this in the past, you might have, you're like, SAI, what's that? It used to be expected EFC, right? The expected family contribution. So again, a couple of years ago, all that has changed, and it's modeled to be a bit easier. But there's still a lot of challenges for not just, families who are new to the system, maybe you don't speak the language, but also families that are different, families that are divorced, families that have remarriages within their families. So how does that work with you have someone who's raised by a single parent or has two parents, but, has to choose which one to fill out the FAFSA? Like, how does that all work?
Yeah, I mean, it's really on a case-by-case basis. So I think I won't try to detail any of the specific ones here, but there's a great tool on the FSA website called How to Select My Contributor. And contributor is a parent, step-parent, adoptive parent who's the person who needs to share their tax information, their financial information for the student. So there's a great wizard that will walk you through, and it'll ask you things like, my parents are married, yes or no? If you answer yes, they'll ask, do they file jointly? Yes or no? And then tell you who is your contributor parent. So in that case, right, parents filed jointly, parents are married, parents filed jointly. We only need one parent's contributor information on the process for the FAFSA form because they're pulling all that tax data together from one place. But that's like the simplest one. It can be a lot more complex with step parents, and if who you're living with majority, but who's providing the most financial help, because it's important to know that the contributor is different than who claims the student as a dependent on their taxes. So there's some different nuances in there that kind of wizard really helps people walk through. And of course, if this is feeling like finding a wizard on the FSA website, like, just come to Granite Edvance. You can come to Concord in person, meet us on Zoom. We're open Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. We'll be happy to sit down and walk you through that.
Oh, that's awesome. It's, sometimes it's just nice to know a guy, a person and make a phone call, because it's really hard. And so, I appreciate you making that offer even to your, Southern neighbors, to just make a phone call. Like, I have a question. I heard, Matt Wallace talking on this podcast, and I just have a question. How do I start? Or like, this is an obstacle for me.
Sure.
And, we talk a lot about on this podcast, is it personal finance? It's personal. And I think that when you're trying to finance and support your child's dream and their future, and, then you have to lay it all on the table, and you want to make sure you do it right so they have the most opportunity and you can afford it the best way. I mean, now the FAFSA is not the only form that colleges take. Some colleges require more forms. What are those? And do you work with those forms as well?
Yeah, so there's a few colleges that have created their own independent forms. Those are really far and few between. The FAFSA was the primary one. There's another form called the CSS Profile. It's owned by the College Board, the same organization who does the SAT, PSAT. There's about 250 schools across the country who require the CSS Profile. What it does, it's a deeper dive into your finances. So they're going to ask more questions, and it takes probably about 3 hours to fill out if you have all your documentation. So we really, with the CSS Profile, we encourage people to go onto the College Board website, look at the CSS Profile, understand all the documentation you need, and have it all when you sit down to start going through it. At Granite Edvance, we'll help people if they're stuck on a question with the CSS profile, or, hey, I got to this, I'm just not really sure what it's asking, but we don't do full walkthroughs of the CSS profile just because it takes 3 hours. But we will, if you get to a point where you're stuck, where you're like, oh, I really love to bounce this off somebody before I put my information in, we will be happy to have those conversations. And again, on our website, we have a great CSS profile webinar that we did. A couple of our team members and an aid officer from Dartmouth came together and put that together. And Dartmouth is a CSS school, so it's great to hear their insight.
Yeah. Well, and my experience, helping my children, as students go through this now almost 4 times. Most public schools take the FAFSA, and the majority of private universities take both and the CSS profile. So it just depends. You don't, usually if you're going, the public university or college route, it's like one-stop shopping with the FAFSA. But if you're looking at any private parochial institutions, you may have that extra paperwork to do. Is that your experience as well?
Yeah, it tends to be the more selective privates too, right? So the Ivies, the mini Ivies, it's only 250 schools out of the thousands that are in the country. So in New Hampshire, only Dartmouth is a CSS school.
Really? That is so interesting.
was a CSS school, and they kept it through the Better FAFSA rollout. But I believe that they have eliminated the need for it again. Anyway, I think it was always an optional requirement. But I know like Colby Sawyer, Franklin Pierce, they don't require Southern New Hampshire. They don't require the CSS. So I believe it's just Dartmouth in New Hampshire.
All right, well, that makes things a little bit easier. And easier is always better.
I guess one other thing I'd love to point out with the CSS profile, just from a financial planning, there is a fee associated with the CSS profile. So it's $25 for your first school, $16 per every school after that. There are some ways you can get a fee waiver for those. There's a adjusted gross income limit. And if you were qualified to have the SAT fee waived, then you'd likely qualify for the CSS profile waiver as well.
Well, yeah. So free is part of the acronym for FAFSA. Yeah. So that there is no fee associated with filling out that form. So that's important as well. How have you seen financial education that you do, or maybe even in the communities you serve that is done in high schools or areas? How has that benefited this whole process?
Yeah, I think what it does is it just really pulls back the mystery of it and the uncertainty. So the college enrollment process is a time of great stress for a lot of families. And we see that, there's some stress about making that college list and figuring out where you're going to visit, but it doesn't feel as concrete to some families as the financial process, because it is really make or break. So having these kind of financial aid presentations, so we do a few, and maybe this, I can peel back the onion a little bit here. We do a financial aid 101 presentation in high schools in the fall, and then a paying for college 101 in the spring. And then we kind of mirror those two presentations up with 3 101 appointments where we'll do understanding financial aid. So this is filing the FAFSA, then we'll do a FAFSA appointment, and then we'll do a financial aid offer review where we take the 5 or 6 letters that somebody has and walk them through the difference, because they all can be very different.
They're so different. It's not comparing apples to oranges. It's like you got a basket of fruit in front of you. It's the way that every school outlines your aid, and then what the bottom number is could have loans embedded into it, and you think this is what I owe, but then you don't realize that you said yes to loans. So these are the reasons why it's kind of important to have this financial education so that you know what to look at. It's so huge. And I think that, the fact that you embed not just looking for college, but affording college. And I think that's what a lot of families and students, don't talk about. They don't talk about the financial piece until maybe all the offers are in front of them. And then it's a really tricky decision to make. Yeah, I had a friend who was talking about her students reach school and then their financial reach school. And I thought that was an interesting distinction because it's just saying that kind of normalizes the fact that like, this is a reach.
Right.
We might not be able to do this. We might have to make a different choice. And that's a hard conversation.
Yeah. But I applaud your friend for having that conversation. That's
right?
really sound college and college financial planning. Before I was at Granite Edvance, I was at Plymouth State for 8 years in their admissions office. And I can't count how many times we got to that like decision day, right? Late April, May 1st. And families were saying like, I wish I'd had this conversation because now I'm having to tell my student that we can't make their dream school work. Where if, as your friend did with like the financial reach school, it's setting that expectation that this may or may not be possible. And the student is kind of more mentally prepared to say, okay, when I get all my aid offers, this is what I hope to go to, but we know it might be a financial reach. So it really is contingent on that aid package. So I applaud your friend. They're doing it absolutely right.
What advice would you give to like, anybody or family or student going through this process?
Well, normally it's have that family finance conversation, but since we touched on that already, I think my other piece of advice is start earlier with the FAFSA, right? You want to give yourself...
give us those dates.
Yeah.
FAFSA it opened already.
Opens up every year, October 1st. It actually opened up a week before. The federal government was ahead this year, which is nice because last year it was December 1st. The year before that, with some of the challenges, it was January something. So October 1st is when it's supposed to open every year. And most schools have a priority FAFSA deadline, meaning to get your maximum aid package, you need to have your FAFSA submitted to the school by March 1st. But I always say, do it in October, November. The earlier, the better. And really the reason is you're not going to get a financial aid package from a school until you're accepted. So you have to go through the admissions process, be accepted. At that point, the school will pull down your financial aid information from the federal government and create an aid package. And depending upon their timing, you'll get it sometime after you were admitted. So you want to allow that time frame from when you have your aid packages for your school to you have to make the decision to be large enough to have those conversations, to explore finances, to see what that gap is. Maybe you apply for some scholarships, hear from those scholarships. Do the FAFSA early. You can put up to 20 colleges on the FAFSA. So even if there's 3 or 4 colleges interested now, but you do the FAFSA, then you go to a college fair next month and you say, oh, this college I never heard of before is really interesting to me. You can go back and add the school to your FAFSA at that point. So you don't have to wait till you're admitted. That's a common misnomer we hear in the field. It's like, I'm waiting to do the FAFSA till I know what schools I'm going to. No, do the FAFSA first. Put every college you're applying on. And if you get acceptance letters, you'll then get financial aid packages to help you maybe do an initial call. Well, that one financially doesn't fit. So I know when I'm doing my second college visit or going to accept the student days, you've pared down to the ones that are a good financial fit too.
Awesome. And unfortunately, I mean, it is getting easier to do, but unfortunately, it's not a one and done situation. You have to do it every year, correct?
Yep.
So going into your second year, third year, fourth year, God forbid your fifth year, sometimes it takes longer. You do have to fill it out. And the look back for the year that you're submitting is 2 years, correct? So if I'm filling out the FAFSA this year, it's looking back at my 2024 taxes. That
is correct. And that poses some challenges for some families, right? Sometimes since 2024, there's been, sometimes it's heartbreaking stories. Family loss, somebody's lost a high-paying job and your financial situation has drastically changed. In those cases, you would want to reach out to the schools you're admitted to and talk about what they call professional judgment appeal. So you can reach out to the school and say, my 2024 tax information, our family's income was so much higher than it is now because X, Y, or Z happened, or lost a job,
sickness or anything.
Somebody got sick. And they'll a lot of times have a form that the student and the family will fill out, and then they will review that. So typically it's things like a loss in the family, loss of jobs, sickness. They're not going to take into consideration like, well, we have this big vacation planned, or my other siblings going to graduate school. Most of those times, those kind of things don't figure into it. But it's those true things that are kind of like, you don't have a lot of control over it, right? Life-changing things you don't have a lot of control of. And one thing, it is kind of a pain, but each school has to do those separately. So I often encourage, get your initial aid packages, find out the few schools you want to have that conversation, because, a lot of times it's a hard conversation and there's multiple steps involved in it.
At the end of the day, when you are admitted to a college, you're dealing with people or a group of people who are making these decisions. And I remember, having to have some things reviewed. And I was told by this university that they met every week. They would review, every case in a group every week, and they'd get back to you. So, and I felt like at that time, I was like, oh, this feels like I'm dealing with a human. After all of these forms, it feels like, okay, well, this is someone who's actually looking at this situation, and that can feel really good after a long process. Matt, this has been awesome.
Yeah,
I really appreciate you telling us not only about yourself and what you've learned along this way, but the great resource that Granite Edvance can be, not only to New Hampshire residents, but those attending New Hampshire schools, or just even as a resource for those who are out of state and might just want to call up or go on your website and see the YouTube videos of what you're doing in schools there. I think we all can learn from each other when it comes to financial education, and, sharing is caring.
Totally.
In this situation. We all need this. So this is great. First tell me how to find Granite Edvance online.
So Granite Edvance, so it's GraniteEdvance.org. And then if you do /help, that'll bring you right to our appointment bookings, our resource libraries, a link to our YouTube channel. That's probably the most popular landing page for people in the financial aid planning process.
Okay, awesome. And I'm making myself laugh over here, because not only do I say FAFSA wrong, but I've been saying Granite Edvance instead of like Granite. What is it? Granite Advance.
Advance,
no,
yeah.
Advance. I'm putting the wrong emphasis on the wrong syllable. Or whatever. So all the words I'm messing up today, but we got a good conversation in. So I do want to do some rapid fire behind the curtain call questions.
Let's do it.
Let's see how fast we can do this. All right, Matt, what is your favorite word?
I think empathy.
What is your least favorite word?
Oh, man. In my professional career, no, because it's like from emissions and the work we do, when I have to like get to that point where we're saying no to someone, that it's always a rough conversation.
What is your theme song if you had a walk-up song as a baseball player or something?
Oh, man. I grew up playing baseball, and I probably had this for a long time, like in my head, but I haven't thought about this in probably a decade and a half. So
you don't think about this every day? Oh,
no,
my gosh, you're too busy.
I should think about this every day when I walk downstairs to my kids. Like, I need a theme song to get me psyched for the day. So, oh, man, I don't know. I don't get a good answer for you on this one.
That's okay. If it comes to you during this rapid fire, you can come back. What's your most used emoji?
Upside down smiley face when things are just going funny.
Good one. What gets you motivated to do the work you do?
Just helping people, right? Like, I was one of those people growing up that I didn't always know what I wanted to do, but finding the work that truly helps people is just pretty self-motivating that way.
That's awesome. What keeps you from doing your work?
Some of the challenges are just the ever-changing workspace. So sometimes we've started creating something, and then there's a change, right? We had started, for instance, we'd started building a program about entering repayment. So you get out of school, you're getting the end of your grace period. We had put together a whole presentation, and then all the changes at the federal level have happened with different repayment plans and the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. So we've kind of had to table that. So it just, in this industry, there's a lot of changes. So sometimes we have to pause.
Yep. What is money advice you would like to erase from your memory?
Probably that there's like any set amount of money you should spend on something specific, right? Like, I remember growing up, my parents said, like, you shouldn't spend more than X amount on a car payment, and that keeps changing as the world economy changes. So I think there's not really a, real fine point you could put on any of those pieces.
Yeah. That's funny, the things that stick in your memory as a kid, too. What's money advice you received that you wish you had known sooner?
That savings adds up, And it's not just $20. If it's $20 now, over time, there'll be more. And that even the small savings early can be a big help.
All right, lastly, give our listeners a challenge. What is something that they could do or start today that could change their financial lives?
All right, I'm going to do two, and it's going to be very education based. If you're a senior, in high school, no matter what you think your plans are, go do the FAFSA today. If you're a parent, grandparent, somebody who has a young person in their life, meaning a grandkid, a young child, 1, 2, 3 years old, go start that student at 529 plan. 529 plan is a tax advantage savings plan specifically for education. And again, to my point a second ago, a little bit of savings here adds up over time. It's a great way to contribute to that young person in your life's future.
Awesome. So when you think they have everything they need for the holidays this season, start the 529. Great advice.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Matt. It's been a pleasure having you. You gave us some great information. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Julie. This has been great.
Thanks for tuning in to Behind the Curtain, Money Made Simple. If you liked what you heard, if you learned something, subscribe, leave a review, and tell a friend, because good financial education deserves a standing ovation. And remember, you don't have to know all the steps before you take the stage. You just need the courage to show up, ask questions, and maybe, just maybe, sing a little bit along the way. I'm Julie Beckham, and Behind the Curtain, Money Made Simple is brought to you by Rockland Trust, member FDIC, the bank where each relationship matters, because we want you to have a healthy relationship with money at any age. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed are the speaker's own and do not represent the views, thoughts, and opinions of Granite Edvance. The material and information presented here is for general information purposes only and is believed to be materially accurate at the time of the recording. However, information presented is subject to change without notice and should not be construed as a commitment by Granite Edvance.